This wasn't even close. Like in watching the fight, because I know, like a lot of people, more than I thought, had said, "Oh, Stephen Fulton's gonna take this dude to school." ESPN is hyping him up, him being Naoya Inoue, and that Stephen Fulton's gonna just use his reach, just jab him, whatever, just outbox him, and it's like none of that shit happened. I'm not sure Stephen Fulton won a round, if we're being totally honest.
I mean, like, here's the thing that I kind of saw.
I'm sure
about
you
it.
found a round that gave him, but I didn't.
The only round that I found to gave him was that 7th round, which I think was his best round. He came out decent in the 3rd, but then Inoue ended up winning that round. Looked a little bit better in the 4th. Inoue won that round. Looked a little bit better in the 5th. Inoue still won that round for me. The only round that I actually gave Stephen Fulton was that 7th round before he ended up getting knocked out in the 8th and they had to stop the fight. And it was that nasty right that Inoue landed, and he was mixing it up. He was going to the body, and Stephen Fulton could just not get into a rhythm in this fight, not at all.
Look for the beginning of the fight. Stephen Fulton and Naoya Inoue come out. Inoue jabs him to the belly twice, and I'm like, oh shit. All right, there goes the range question.
I thought he was too tentative the whole entire fight. And when he was in range, you would think that he would start to let his hands go or establish the jab. And when his game plan wasn't working, I was like, he might have to have like a telephone booth fight with this dude. Is that safe? Probably not against a guy like Inoue. But he just couldn't get into a rhythm that whole entire fight. And it's crazy because, I mentioned in the last episode, like when Inoue moved up to 118, I was like, is he like too small for 118? I was proven wrong, right? He moves up to 122 and does this to the king, essentially, of the 122-pound division and makes it look easy. And we talked about what this might mean for Inoue if he gets this victory and does it in style. Pound for pound list. Okay.
Oh.
Is he number 1 after this?
That's what I was saying before we were talking about this. Look, I think, and if you have comments, if you're watching, please do leave them. But listen, I think that he is in that conversation and was even before this, and we'll have to see what happens with Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence and who wins how. But look, people were talking about Naoya Inoue's resume before this fight.
Yeah.
Stephen Fulton, like, his best win was against Brandon Figueroa, who's a good fighter, but like, let's not act like Stephen Fulton beat this list of champions either. Inoue's been in 17, 18 straight title fights at this point, right? He cleaned out the bantamweight division. Jason Maloney, who we had on the show, Emmanuel Rodriguez, who Jason Maloney fought, both of whom got stopped by Naoya Inoue. Naoya Inoue stopped both of them. And Rodriguez, he did it very early in the fight. It was in the 2nd round. It was shocking that he did it that early to me. It was the most epic body punching I saw that year. And in terms of pound for pound conversation, this is similar to just what I was saying about Terrence Crawford and the Roy Jones Jr. comparison. It's one thing to be fighting dudes and people say like, oh, you're not beating the best competition. It's another thing to just blow them out of the water, because none of these fights with Inoue is involved in are close, except for that first Nonito Donaire fight where he fractured his eye socket. He like broke his face during the fight. Then it went to a decision, but he still clearly won that fight. No one is out here saying Nonito Donaire won that fight. And then in the rematch, he destroys him. This is what he does. So the floor is pound for pound number 2. Number 1 is Terrence Crawford if he wins that fight. Errol Spence, if he wins that fight, impressive fashion, is going to have a case, but I don't know if you're going to put him at number 1 over Naoya Inoue after what we just saw.
Right now, Inoue's number 1 on my pound for pound list. After what we just saw him do to Stephen Fulton, like, this is crazy of what he just did to Cool Boy Steph. Because Brian, I'm a big Cool Boy Steph fan. To go into that ring right away and a nerd just commented, Fulton got exposed. You know what I think it was? I think Inoue's just that good.
You think it's the mystique also? Because
wait, hold on. Before you get into that, how much did the layoff, Fulton's longer layoff, have to do with his performance today? Because I think it had something to do with it. We saw Josh Taylor fight Teofimo Lopez not too long ago. I feel like that was some ring rust. Fulton's been out of the ring for over a year now, going to Japan. He wasn't in his hometown. He wasn't even in the States. He went to another country to fight Inoue, had a long
Is
layoff.
Shantelle making excuses, guys, in the
No,
comments?
I'm saying how much did that have to do with it? Do you think it had an effect at all?
Um, look, almost 14 months if you do the math, because the last fight was June of last year, early June of last year. Perhaps I think mostly that affects you in the start, but on some level, you have to let your hands go. So I don't think his performance was enough to show that. Like he didn't build up enough excuses for me, I guess is the point. Because it's not like the fight was close, right?
No,
It's
not at
not like he
all.
just gave up the first 3 rounds, started rallying a little bit, and then was put down. I don't know if he won a round. Like
I gave him the seventh round. I gave him the seventh round, but you could have given that round as well to Inoue.
I don't know if he won a round. Like I was watching the fight, and I think it was maybe round 5 or 6 where I was like, that was Stephen Fulton's best round, and I'm not sure he won it because
No,
Inoue is
he
just
didn't.
active the
Yeah.
entire time. And granted, I thought that there was some because this happens when you fight in somebody's hometown. There were some, and I know this as a Felix Trinidad guy. There's some times where now Inoue doesn't really land something, it gets blocked, and the crowd is oohing and eyeing because of how it looks or whatever is partially blocked. But he was landing a lot of those shots, a lot of times
You know
anyway.
what? The first 3 rounds, though, I thought Fulton blocked a lot of his shots. They weren't clean shots that were landed on him, but he was getting the oohs and ahs. But in Japan, it's a little bit different. It's not like in the States, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's a great. That's actually a great comment right now by IMPK13, who, by the way, is one of our regulars that hops on these lives. So we do appreciate you. Anyway, going for undisputed because we know what happened to Stephen Fulton's nemesis.
Yeah.
Marlon Tapales came in and took those belts away from Akhmadaliev.
I'm not gonna
And
lie though. Like, if I'm looking at the list of this is the logical fight next. Like, let's have Inoue try to go undisputed in another weight class. Which I mean, come on, like that. You want to talk about history and future Hall of Fame resume? Like, we're seeing a future Hall of Famer in real time right now. I firmly believe that. This fight doesn't excite me as much as the Stephen Fulton one did. And there are no fights as super. This is the thing about him beating Stephen Fulton in the first fight, right? It's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. I'm not as excited. I'm not going to be as excited about any of the fights as super bantamweight going forward. I'll be excited and I'm going to watch and we're going to cover it because it's Naoya Inoue. But in terms of the competition here, Luis Neri, you know what I mean? Like Marlon Tapales, who obviously has both titles, and if you look on down the line, like you just don't have a lot there to work with. And if you go to, I think potentially what I'm getting at is this will be a short time at super bantamweight, and then eventually we'll see at featherweight. Now you're in a way where there are some interesting matchups there.
all right, so Tyrone the Great, I'm feeling the exact same way you are right now with those crying emojis. Also, Tyrone the Great, one of our regulars, a friend of the show, might I say. He said, I want to see him go to featherweight and take Davis Drain down to 30 and fight them.
Nah, tank it moving to 130 at this point. I would
Yeah.
imagine that someone else I saw tweeted that like I get like no you Inoue versus Tank Davis. I'm like that's realistically is not gonna happen, but that would be a lot of fun if it did. But I don't think you could come to a reasonable like even catch weight for that fight. At featherweight though, there are some interesting matchups there for Inoue if he's gonna move up. But I still think that's maybe a year or so away. But the fact that we're talking about that now is crazy because he took out what I thought and what you thought was the undisputed king of this division, Stephen Fulton. I think even now, like this is similar to how I felt after Inoue got rid of Manny Rodriguez, got rid of Jason Maloney, where like those are top 2 guys in the weight classes. I still think Stephen Fulton's the second best guy in this weight class
He
right
is.
now, regardless of how he looked. Like I think he'll beat pretty much everyone else in this weight class, assuming that his chin holds up going forward. Because once it goes once, we have to be careful with that now. But Naoya Inoue was dominant tonight. Like one of the things that really impressed me, to talk about the actual fight for a second, one of the things that really impressed me was he had the 3-inch reach disadvantage and just destroyed him in the jab battle. Jabs to the body, jabs to the head, was able to get in and out, perfect timing a lot of the times, was moving his head constantly. I was impressed by his defense and I was impressed by how much he was able to use his jab. Round 1, it was just establishing the jab. Jab, 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 upstairs, downstairs, up jab, etc. And then round 2 is when he started throwing right hands behind it. And then you just saw him mix it up going forward, head, body. And he's just all around maybe the best fighter pound for pound in the world right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's a doubt about it. Going back to the fight, when we talked about the first 3 rounds, the first 4 rounds, when it went 4-0 in a way, right away, I was like, I didn't expect him to be winning 4 rounds to nothing against a guy like Stephen Fulton, who is so skilled, right? And you thought right away, we were talking about how he was the bigger guy, right? How he was going to establish the jab, how he was the slicker boxer, how Inoue was going to look in this weight class. Like there were so many questions coming into this fight. And, Tim Bradley said it perfectly on that broadcast. When you're that great, you make it look that easy. I don't think there's anyone else in this weight class, in the super bantamweight weight class, that can make Stephen Fulton look the way that Inoue did tonight or this morning.
Or featherweight or bantamweight or like in these lighter weight classes. I think if you're still ranking everyone from like featherweight down, Stephen Fulton's going to be top 5 on that list of boxers.
You know what my issue was with this fight? It's like when he was in range and he was able to get in range, he just didn't let his hands go. And it's like you have to let your hands go in a fight like this. You didn't expect the boxer to get outboxed by a guy like Inoue, but Inoue has skill as well.
You know why,
Van Dam, I was very impressed with Inoue's jabs. Fulton was more stationary than I thought he would be. I agree with you. I thought he was tentative. I thought he was giving. You have to give a guy like Inoue respect. But when you're in range, you got to let your hands go. And he was giving him way too much respect. Like you have to take advantage of those opportunities.
But I think that's what it was. It was basically like Stephen Fulton immediately, because I told you, jabs to the stomach, like right away, was letting the right hand go, Naoya Inoue. And I think, he didn't want to let his hands go because he knew it was coming back at him. And he was trying to figure out ways where he could sort of get in and out of range without taking a lot of damage and, swim in water without getting wet. But Inoue made his presence felt from the opening bell. I think that really, like, again, those first 10 seconds were a lot for me because he came out, was aggressive right away, and was like, look, I'm not going to let you win this jab battle. I'm not going to let you win this range battle, even though I'm shorter, 3 inches with a smaller reach. Yeah, I'm just going to take control of this fight. And he did, and Stephen Fulton kind of let it happen, but didn't quite come up with the answers to negate that. Robin B31 comments, respect to Palas for showing up with his belts and taking on the challenge right away. Have a look and learn Fury. Oh, Tyson Fury is going to fight Francis Ngannou. God damn it.